3 here at Comic-Con. And we've talked to so many people, we've seen so many interesting people, but it boils down to one right here, the one and only, Mr. Christopher Priest, who arguably is one of the, if not the only first person that could be credited as one of the main black creators for Marvel. DC, you was the editor, former editor of Marvel back in the 70s.
Oh, no. Back in, Marvel, yes, 1978.
Okay.
And then DC in 1990.
Okay, so we are going to talk to Mr. Priest. He has so much experience, has so many accolades to his name. He's everyone's favorite person.
No,
in
not
comics.
really. I can name a dozen people I'm not their favorite person. Easy.
Well, most creators, they all mention you as an influence in their work and why they want to work in the industry. And when I met you the other day, you told me to Google you. And not too many people tell me that when I meet them. Like, just do your homework on me and then come back to me. Because usually it means two things. Either there's nothing, you're not going to find much, or you're going to find a whole lot of information.
Right.
And you are the whole lot of information. So you're here at Comic-Con. I don't even want to ask you how many times you've been at Comic-Con, because I feel like you've been here since the beginning of all this conventions, all of everything in comics. How did you end up, this is your first one? Really?
First New York, and I was at San Diego, so that was the first time I was at, no, it was the second time I was at San Diego. This is the first time I was at New York Comic-Con.
How do you like New York Comic-Con?
It reminds me a lot of San Diego Comic-Con. It's huge, it's a little overwhelming. But sure, it's kind of great, to see all these fans come out and actually to see more women and more diversity, culturally. So it's not just a group of white men, dressed as, Deathstroke, walking around here. So it's very gratifying to see that.
Are you liking or appreciating all of the black cosplayers coming out? And they're not just cosplaying as everybody, but also, holding down the black comic characters, the Luke Cages, the Storms, the Misty Knights.
Oh yeah, and I'm running into a lot of black female fans as well, which always surprises me because I don't know any black female comic book fans.
Really?
And yet there's dozens of them up here, and they're coming up and they're introducing themselves, and I'm like, wow, you read comics? And they go, yeah. And I went, okay, that's new. That was really new to me.
Is it new to you because the time when you was coming out and you was like at the height, still at the height of your career, there wasn't a lot of women being exposed to it, or do you feel like it's just we've never really been recognized?
Well, there weren't a lot of female comic book fans of any race, that I was in the 70s and 80s, particularly, so this is a relatively new phenomenon, and I think it sort of came to pass through, shows like Game of Thrones, and then obviously the Marvel stuff on Netflix and the DC stuff on CW, where it became sort of mass market and, beyond just the comic book shops, because comic book shops can be in a really intimidating place because they're small and confined, and they got stacks of these long boxes all over the place. And I would imagine if you're a female who is curious about what's going on in there, you walk in there and there's all these geeky guys who are afraid to talk to you, first of all, and they're intimidated just by you standing there. It's a very polarizing place. So once the superhero genre started moving out to the mainstream through film and television and other things like that, I think that's when you started to see, look around. You start to see this resurgence, and you start to see, everybody's here. Literally everybody's here. Race, color, creed, sexual orientation, gender, everybody's here. There's probably a chicken, clucking around here somewhere.
So what do you have on display today? What are you giving the fans?
Okay, I don't sell anything. I don't really display anything. I have some little, cards and stuff that I give away. Most of them are gone already. Basically, I'm just here to shake hands and kiss babies and sign autographs. I don't really sell anything. No offense to anyone who does, but I just feel like, these are people who support me and pay my rent. I shouldn't be charging them. They already bought the comic book. God bless you for that. That was charity enough, So that's kind of my feeling about it.
I have to ask a question. What made you kill Iron Fist?
Actually, I was ordered to kill Iron Fist.
Really?
That wasn't my idea.
Really? How did that come about?
I don't know. They were looking for an ending for the book. I think there was something, I used to use a term called office wars. And what office wars means is things that I can't be very specific about without people getting angry at me because these people are still working in the industry, okay? But there was some sort of inter-office conflict that led to the cancellation of that book, and the editor wasn't happy about it. So the editor was like, "Well, he sort of came up with that idea and said, you know what? I'll tell you what. We're going to kill off Iron Fist and have Luke get blamed for it, and that's how we're ending the series." And that was kind of his way of getting back at people who made these decisions to cancel. The book was selling 125,000 copies when it got canceled.
Oh, wow.
Okay, but it got canceled to make room for something called the New Universe, and the editor was not happy about it. So I was kind of ordered to do it, and I said, well, I really didn't want to do it. And said, well, if you don't do it, I'll bring in another writer and let him do it. And I was like, well, if Iron Fist has to go, it's my character. At the moment, it was my character. I felt, kind of paternal about it. I said, all right, well, I'll go ahead and do it. But if I hadn't done it, he would have brought somebody else in to write that issue.
How do you like the Luke Cage now that we're seeing? Are you in love with Luke Cage now? Do you like what David Walker has done with Luke Cage? Like, are you liking the series on Netflix? Like, are you?
I haven't seen the series.
Okay.
I've seen Luke Cage on Jessica Jones.
Okay.
I haven't gotten to the Luke Cage series yet.
Okay.
That's my next, thing that I need to binge watch. But so far, so good. I was really impressed that, at least on Jessica Jones, his ethnicity was almost secondary. It really didn't matter. They could have cast a white guy in that role. I mean, he was just a fully realized character, fully realized human being. And the fact that he was black played some role in the drama, but it wasn't like sometimes they will start with, here's a black guy who da-da-da-da-da-da, and rather I'd say let's create the da-da-da first. Let's create a fully realized character who just happens to be black, rather than make, him being black the whole purpose for this guy's existence. I am a black man, but I am more than my skin color. I'm a writer, I'm a musician, I'm a minister, I'm all these things. I have value as a human being, and I don't want people just to see my blackness and stop there. I want you to see me as a person, and I want to feel like that I can compete on the same level as anyone else, and that I have no restrictions based on this. Mm-hmm. So I really like the way they built that character from the inside out.
How did you get into comics?
By accident.
Really?
I was in journalism school. I was at the New York School, it's now called the New York School of Media Arts. When I went, it was called the New York School of Printing. But it was a vocational high school that taught printing and newspaper and magazine journalism. Okay, and they had an internship program through the school board, and I was set up with 3 law firms and Marvel Comics. And I blew off the law firms and didn't show up to those appointments. But I went down to Marvel Comics, and it was me and like 4 other artists. And Jim Shooter, who was the editor-in-chief at the time, he looked at the artist portfolio, and I had a comic book that I had written and drawn through the school. And I gave him my comic book.
Do you remember the character you had developed?
Oh, I know Spider-Man was in there. I think the character's name was Stingray. He was an original character of mine. Jim read the comic book, and he looked at the other guys' portfolios, and he picked me over the artist, and sort of decided he was going to tutor me how to write and how to become an editor in comics.
Now, I did read that when you was at Marvel as an editor, you was kind of thankful that you was asked to leave. Is that really true?
That I was asked to leave?
Well, you was fired or you was dismissed from your position, that you was thankful.
Well, no, I think there was some conflict between me and one of Jim's other editors, and the other editor kind of gave an ultimatum. One of these, it's either him or me, and the other guy was, I don't know that he was more important or they had a bigger contract or whatever the story was, but for reasons that only Jim knows, I lost the coin toss. But I wasn't fired. Jim just gave me a contract as a writer. Mm-hmm. So I made more money to not come into the office. So it was a good deal. It was a win-win as far as I was concerned.
What characters in comics do you like now? Like, who are you still following Spider-Man? Are you still following anything particular in DC? Like, who are you following with now? Who are you reading now, if you are reading?
I actually don't read comics. So really? I'm not following anybody. And I had been out of comics for so long that I felt no need to keep up with what was going on. So suddenly I'm back in comics, but I'm so busy with Deathstroke that I really don't have time to duck my head out and see what's going on in Green Lantern or something like, or Spider-Man or something like that, because Deathstroke publishes twice a month, and I'm just on the treadmill trying to keep those scripts coming.
How did you get back into Deathstroke?
They just called me.
Okay.
DC called me, asked me to do Cyborg, and I turned them down.
Why?
Well, because that's all I've been offered for the last 7 years, were characters of color. And I felt like at one point, when I started my career as a writer, writing Green Lantern, writing Spider-Man, Batman, a lot of other characters like that. And at some point along the way, I stopped being a writer and I became a black writer. And I said, no, I can compete I compete with anybody else you got. So every 18 months or so, either Marvel or DC would call and they would invite me to write something, and it was inevitably a black character. And I just let it be known that I'd love to write comics. I miss writing comics, but until you guys start seeing me as an equal to any other writer that you got there, we're all just kind of wasting our time. So, they offered me Cyborg, or offered me to apply for Cyborg, to compete for Cyborg. Sorry, and I gave him the speech, and about a week later, I got a call back from DC asking me about Deathstroke. So my first question was, is he black? And they said no. And I said, okay, I'm listening. Keep going. And then we started talking about him as being a villain, and the dramatic opportunities that would produce, and we went in that direction.
Now I have a question for you regarding Deathstroke. How do you make Deathstroke interesting enough where people don't always compare Deathstroke to Deadpool?
Well, having written Deadpool for 2 years, I know Deadpool pretty intimately, and what I'm trying to do with Deathstroke is separate the echo from the voice. Okay, because Deadpool is a parody of Deathstroke, but Deadpool has become so popular that most people assume it's the other way around, that Deathstroke is some sort of knockoff of Deadpool. So I'm trying to make Deathstroke, see, I can't get them confused now. I'm trying to make Deathstroke as unique and as different and as dramatically impactful as possible, so that Deathstroke is as deadly serious as Deadpool is funny. And to really just completely separate these two. So we modified his costume a little bit, and we're taking this whole different direction with him. And that's part of the mission, is to just kind of rescue Deathstroke from being in the shadow of Deadpool.
And how did that actually happen? I mean, I know the movie is a big success, but how did Deathstroke, which was first, become like the back shadow to Deadpool, which is a parody?
I don't know. Deadpool just became just hilarious. And even before the movie, it became enormously popular. I don't know. When I was writing Deadpool, the book wasn't selling. And in fact, I got fired off of Deadpool because the book wasn't selling. So I really don't know. But in the intervening years, Deadpool just became enormously popular, so much so that Fox decided to make the film. Meanwhile, Deathstroke kind of devolved from a thinking character, the thinking man's assassin, into being this kind of killing machine, where he was just Schwarzenegger, I'll be back, and he was just slicing people to death. And, I think losing that integrity, losing that internal logic, deeply hurt the character and allowed Deadpool to just eclipse him like that.
Okay. Are there any characters you wish you could write for, or you would like to write for?
Well, I used to want to write Batman. My standard answer was Batman and Iron Man. The problem is that I think everything has been done to death, and I think so much has been done with Batman. I almost don't envy someone who has to write Batman, because I wouldn't know what to do with him. Mainly because, I think once they made, turned Batman into a robot and had Commissioner Gordon in the robot suit, I think they kind of officially jumped the shark with Batman. And with Iron Man, they've made him so invincible now that he's kind of boring and uninteresting. So I shouldn't say that. I haven't read the book. Maybe you're really interesting or whatever. But Batman and Iron Man are two books that I wish that I had had a shot at some
Okay,
point.
last question. I want to ask you, what advice do you give people creatives, especially people of color creatives that want to enter this industry? What advice do you give them?
Be twice as good as the next available person. And don't give up, no matter how many times the door gets slammed in your face. And what I tell young people all the time is get what you want. Figure out what you want and get it. And don't allow your emotion or your ego or your pride to stand in the way. Because if I had done that, I would have walked out on this gig a dozen times over. Sometimes losing or sometimes even just giving in to something ends up being a win for you because you're getting what you're pursuing your objective and getting what you want rather than just, okay, well, I'm going to walk away because this guy insulted me or this guy or this person, took me for granted because of my skin color or whatever the story is. So get what you want and be patient and be perseverant, and persevere, and you get what you want eventually.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Christopher Priest. My superheroes are black.